Thank you for joining me in Hoda's Career Info, the program where career professionals from across the globe meet to empower you to succeed. This program is brought to you by Right Career Fit. Feeling stuck or uncertain in your career path? Have that very important conversation with a career professional. Book your appointment with any of the career professionals interviewed on this program or with me, Hoda, at rightcareerfit.com.
Think in terms of what companies would you like to work for, because they could very well have an opening that hasn't been publicized yet. Job seekers must project confidence to the hiring decision makers so that they, the individual job seekers, let them know that they are serious contenders for their chosen roles. Writing a resume has shifted from the duties and responsibilities approach to more of an achievement focus. In order for a resume to pass through the ATS, it has to be properly formatted. And secondly, it has to contain a series of professionally relevant keywords and key phrases that attest to the knowledge that you offer no matter where you go. Stay away from using a general one-size-fits-all resume because it's going to lengthen your job search, guaranteed.
Thank you again for joining me in Season 2 of Hoda's Career Info, your career program where career professionals from across the globe share career tips and personal stories to help you successfully navigate your career. I am Hoda, your host. I look forward to another season of career chats with international career professionals who will inspire you to take your journey to the next level. My guest today is Marian Bernard. Since 1985, Marian Bernard has helped her job-seeking clientele dramatically shorten their job search through a three-pronged approach that consists of crafting a resume, cover letter, and LinkedIn profile that are aimed at positively distinguishing her clients from the pack so that hiring decision makers will want to set up an interview with Marian's clients. Second, teaching clients on how to ace the interview through informative and targeted interview coaching. And finally, tapping into the hidden job market via contemporary and traditional methods to uncover at least a dozen suitable job opportunities to apply for. However, what sets Marian apart from her resume writing colleagues is that she operates Canada's only while you wait resume writing service. Clients across the globe revel in the fact that she historically produces make it to the top of the job search documents in less than 3 hours. Marian sports the following credentials: Ontario's first certified professional resume writer, earned in 1997. She's one of 2 certified employment interview coaches in Canada, Canada's first certified job search strategist, and one of only 2 nationally certified online professional experts, LinkedIn profile writing in Canada. Her published work appears in Expert Resumes for Managers and Executives, Best Canadian Resumes, Gallery of Best Resumes and Cover Letters without a 4-year degree, the 3rd edition, and Cover Letters for Dummies, Job Search Letters for Dummies. Let's listen together and learn from Marian's expertise. Thank you, Marian Bernard, for joining me today in Hoda's Career Info. I appreciate your time.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me.
Part of this program, Marianne, is to ask you to think of a definition of a key term that relates to the work that you do. So not the dictionary definition, but a career term that relates to the work that you do. What would be your career term and how does it relate to your work?
Okay, well, I would definitely say confidence. The reason I say that is that hiring decision makers only recruit candidates when a void needs to be filled or a problem needs to be solved. Job seekers must project confidence to the hiring decision makers so that they, the individual job seekers, let them know that they are serious contenders for their chosen roles.
That's a great career term that I didn't think of. So thank you so much. It's very concise, but to the point. And really, if it's all about confidence, so true. Another question I will usually ask my guests is to share a little bit of your story. You can kind of pull an excerpt from your life story or share your whole story, whatever you feel like sharing. And perhaps any message that you would like to send by being here on this program.
Okay, well, I originally began my career as an executive secretary with, at that time, Canada's largest chemical company. They've since gone through more than your fair share of acquisitions. Now, while I was there, I earned 2 promotions in only 3 years. Now, when my employer reorganized and merged 2 entities into one, I, along with 34 other employees, were pink slipped, no fault of my own. It was a reorganization. Now, although I had another job lined up, I actually quit after only 3 days because the lure of entrepreneurship, running my business, it was too much of a temptation to ignore. And as a matter of fact, I told my employer after only 3 days, I have the opportunity to start my own business and I will kick myself if I don't follow through. And believe it or not, they wound up becoming clients of mine for 3 years. Now, I originally began my business as a secretarial service. It would now be known as virtual assistants. And resume writing became a profit center, front and center, really, really quickly. Now, the skills that I have that crossed over from executive secretarial to resume writing are threefold. First of all, back in the day, I wrote correspondence for some very discerning executives, so that's why my writing had to be top notch. Secondly, I bring geek level knowledge of English grammar, sentence structure, spelling, and punctuation. And finally, my keyboarding speed is 127 words a minute, and that allows me to offer while you wait service.
That is amazing. Your speed and then your knowledge of the English language, so important when we're writing resumes and trying to figure out some synonyms to words that are more expressive.
Well, it's not only that, the message has to resonate with the hiring decision makers, because in effect, resume writers will tell you that in effect they're writing the resume for 3 audiences. Obviously, the job seeker. Secondly, the hiring decision maker, because the verbiage has to appeal to the hiring decision maker. And finally, the applicant tracking system. So in effect, any bona fide resume writer will tell you that they have to walk on a rather tight balance beam in order to deliver a superior product. And my aim is to positively set my clients above the competition.
Well, you certainly have, and you are known as Ontario's first certified professional resume writer. That's back when you start your business, the Regency Group, in 1985.
Well, now, realistically speaking, the certified professional resume writer designation didn't exist when I first began my business. And as a matter of fact, the internet didn't gain prominence until well after I began my business. But I had earned my certified professional resume writing designation in 1995. And since then, I've earned a few other designations because I always listen to my clients and I think, how can I serve you better? When I first started writing resumes, it was just resumes and cover letters only. And around the late 1990s, people were asking me, how do I conduct myself in an interview? And in 2001, I earned my designation as a certified employment interview professional.
Well, thank you for clarifying that and sharing. Like, it's really a bit of history of how resume writing and when resume writing started in Canada, in particular, I guess, perhaps North America. So, from your personal experience and from your opinion, how has the resume writing business changed over the years? So, from 1995 to today, what stands out to you as the most, or like, this is what I feel is what, is an important milestone?
Actually, three things come to mind. First of all, writing a resume has shifted from the duties and responsibilities approach to more of an achievement focus. The reason for that is that when the internet exploded on the scene in the early to mid 1990s, hiring decision makers, they noticed a sharp uptick in the amount of resumes they were receiving. Now, back in the day, they could receive maybe 6 resumes per day per job. Now they could be receiving as many as 500 resumes per day per job. And those hiring decision makers made an interesting observation when they started noticing a rise in the amount of resumes they were receiving. First of all, the duties and responsibilities approach helped to blend job seekers into the background as opposed to positively standing out. I tell my clients that every hiring decision maker wants to see 3 things in order to make their jobs easier. A, what sets you, the job seeker, apart from hundreds of other job candidates you could be competing against? B, what professionally relevant knowledge that you offer no matter where you go with regard to your chosen vocation, because what would be professionally relevant in, let's say, sales would be different with regard to admin, would be different with regard to management, different with regard to any other vocations. Finally, they're looking for actual examples complete with numbers, dollars, percentages where applicable of how you, the job seeker, ultimately contributed to your employer's success. Second factor I'd like to touch upon, the introduction of technology and how it's made leaps and bounds in terms of how we can transact business. Now, when I originally launched my business in the early summer of 1985, there was no such thing as internet, online presence, or social media. Back in the day, the internet was considered, for all intents and purposes, science fiction material to the general public. Now, interestingly enough, I didn't come online until 1997. I acquired my first modem, and my website made its first appearance in 2004. Now, also, without such technology, back then I could only assist clients in person. Now, since I physically lived 30 minutes north of Toronto, it was originally a tough go to convince Torontonians that I was worth the commute when it came to retaining a professional resume writer. Now, in 2000, I introduced over the phone service where I touted the benefits of clients not needing to visit me in person. These days, and this continues to blow my mind, I've had the privilege of, to date, assisting clients in all 10 Canadian provinces, the 3 territories north of Canada, to date, 48 American states, select countries within the European Union, as well as China, Australia, and I'm sure I'm leaving out a few countries in the process.
That is amazing. That is amazing.
These days, it is rare for me to assist somebody in my own geographic neck of the woods, because technology allows us to reach out to prospective job seekers worldwide. And you can appreciate that since COVID arrived on the scene in March of 2020, I only work virtual these days, either via phone, Zoom, Skype, whatever my job seeking clients prefer. As a matter of fact, earlier this morning, I assisted a client who would normally be a 10-minute drive away from me. We would have normally worked in person, but the reality is COVID is still very much with us, and I don't want to take that chance of contracting COVID.
There's also the commute now that we're so used to Zoom. I find that if I want to factor an appointment, I have to add half hour before, half hour after, right? Just to factor the commute. So it's been so much easier to use Zoom for sure, and convenient.
Well, not only that, I mean, well, I've worked from home for, pretty well from day one. And whereas I used to put a tank of gas in my car maybe once every 3 weeks, once a month before COVID, now I'm putting a tank of gas in my car once every 3 or 4 months. So what can you do?
Well, this is very good news, and thank you for sharing the factors.
Now, I was going to mention,
there was one more. Yes.
Thank you for reminding me. I do admit to having the odd senior moment. Now, the other thing that has changed is, and we touched upon this a little earlier, is certification in a host of areas. For example, resume writing, LinkedIn profile creation, interview coaching, tapping into the hidden job market, and way more certifications and designations. Those factors have become more prevalent. And the different resume writing associations I belong to provide a host of continuing education opportunities. Realistically, if I wanted to devote full time towards acquiring education, I could do it with, and there would still be a lot of other information that would have been untapped. And this was something that was non-existent when I breathed life into my business back in 1985.
So many changes have happened in these years, but it's all for the better. It's all making things easier for job seekers, for sure. And based on your experience, Marianne, what advice would you give today to job seekers who decide they want to write their own resumes? What would be? Yeah.
I touched upon this earlier and I'll reiterate it. Keep in mind that two distinct audiences are going to evaluate your candidacy when you submit your resume. First of all, the actual hiring decision makers, and there's always more than one. Generally speaking, it could be the individuals in human resources, and also the individuals who you could ultimately be reporting to. In addition, the fact that resumes are going to be scanned by human resources software, also known as applicant tracking systems, or ATS for short. Now, in order for a resume to pass through the ATS, it has to be properly formatted. And secondly, it has to contain a series of professionally relevant keywords and key phrases that attest to the knowledge that you offer no matter where you go. Now, in terms of the resume being formatted properly, some of our resume writing buddies are artists when it comes to incorporating things like graphs, charts, columns, tables, headers, and footers into a resume. And done properly, they make the resume really pop visually. However, done improperly, vital information could be rendered invisible. For example, some people will put in their phone number in a header or a footer, and because the applicant tracking system renders headers and footers invisible, suddenly your phone number is rendered invisible as well. And how would a hiring decision maker be able to contact you if you place that information in elements that can be scrubbed? Now, I'd also want to mention, do not use a purchased resume template. The reason being is that they're not properly formatted to pass through the applicant tracking system. And again, reiterating, vital information could be rendered invisible.
Thank you for these tips, Marianne. I do have a question for you about contact information. So you know how we always put the name and the address and the phone number. So how has this changed? Because I'm hearing that you don't have to put your address anymore. You put your email and your phone number. Is that true, or where are we at with that?
It's true, and I would add one thing as well, because some applicant tracking systems will search out your city. For example, I don't live in Toronto proper, but I am part of the Greater Toronto area. And the client I worked with this morning, she is seeking out opportunities in the town that we live in. And I said, I would also recommend that you incorporate Greater Toronto area in the resume, because some hiring decision makers will program the applicant tracking system for Toronto, which is much, much larger than the cities and towns in the surrounding area. So the fact that we did that will mean that her resume can rank higher in the rankings. So if it was me, I would say Marian Bernard, Greater Toronto area, my phone number, my email address, that sort of thing.
Okay, yes. Okay, that's very helpful. And it's good to hear what's happening in the resume writing business. Marianne, you said that if you were to take courses, there's lots for you to choose from. I know the different organizations you belong to, resume writing organizations. But I do have a question for you, because I continually advise my clients is that you need to continually professionally develop, take courses, attend conferences, read books. So what are your plans that you are having, or ideas and projects that you have coming up in the near future?
Now, you can appreciate that these days we are experiencing inflationary levels not seen since the early 1980s. And as a result, a lot of job seekers are feeling the pinch of managing their budgets more than ever. I'm in the process of introducing a range of budget stretching seminars where my focus would be on sharing the tips, tricks, and hacks that have worked for me over the years. Now, I'll be the first to admit that I am not Miss Know-it-all when it comes to saving money. So I'm also in the process of wanting to introduce speakers who specialize in those areas. For example, how to reduce your mortgage, how to save money on clothing, how to save money at the grocery store, that sort of thing. So I would like to bring on speakers who where they have that particular type of area of expertise in that regard. So I'm not playing just one note, but rather I want to deliver subject matter that would be relevant beyond my chosen area of expertise. Now, I'm also exploring the idea of launching a combination podcast and YouTube channel. And the reason for that is that a lot of job seekers, they're clinging to some of the myths that would have served you well back in the 1960s, the 1970s, the 1980s when it comes to job search. For example, go to the, back in the day, you would go to the classified ads in the newspaper, and the classified ads section for opportunities has shrank down to a fraction of what it used to be. So a lot of people are now going to select name job boards. And I'm not going to discount what the job boards do, but they're not the only game in town. And I'd like to be able to shatter the myths associated with a modern day job search. So that's what I'm looking at doing right there.
That is very exciting, and it's definitely important to have these discussions. I mean, what other myth do you have in mind that you can share with the audience about that you would like, that you think irritate you when you hear, oh, this is happening again? I can hear this again.
Okay. Well, the first one that comes to mind is a lot of job seekers think, well, I'll just get a hold of paper copies of my resume and distribute them, pound the pavement, that sort of thing, and give out their resumes. And I know of very few organizations that will accept a paper resume. And what you want to do these days is instead, rather than saturate the local market with your resume, think in terms of what companies would you like to work for, because they could very well have an opening that hasn't been publicized yet. And realistically, you would be doing the organization a favor, because what they'll typically do is they'll put the word out amongst fellow employees who are looking to fill this role. Do you know of anybody? And they'll go through a series of steps that at that point are free. The job boards, the minute that the hiring company wants to use a job board, they have to pay to do that. So if the job seeker thinks, I'd love to work for company ABC, and they could very well be looking for somebody to fill the role that the job seeker is qualified to do, that job seeker could be saving their prospective employer a lot of money.
Yes, and we hear a lot, and research shows that 80% of jobs are filled through networking, right?
Absolutely.
These are all the questions I have for you today, Marianne. I would like you to wrap up your way. Anything you wanted to speak about, but I didn't ask you about, feel free to share. Any more tips would be great as well.
Well, one of the things that I hear from prospective clients is, well, my third cousin once removed wrote her resume. She got a job, so she was thinking about helping me write my resume. And the third cousin once removed might mean well, but I will bet that they haven't taken the professionally relevant coursework that it takes for a job seeker to succeed. So job seekers would be very wise to consider having their resume professionally prepared.
I agree with you. And then actually this leads me to another question. I know I said we're done, but what are your thoughts on changing the resume for every position? Are you okay with that, or do you think?
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up, because when people say to me, well, I'd like to receive a general one size fits all resume that I can use anytime, anywhere for any job alive, hiring decision makers, the reality is they're going to place a general resume in the no pile in very swift order, because the general resume can't attest to the value that you offer with regard to the actual job titles you could be applying for. I personally could have 4 resumes the way my career has played out. The first one would be resume writer, because I've been doing this for 37 years and change. So that one is a no-brainer. Now, amazingly, I had a career prior to writing resumes. I'm originally a trained executive secretary. And if I wanted to go back into the executive secretarial world, won't happen, by the way, but if I ever wanted to go back, what I would do is I would bring forward my executive secretarial experience and put the resume writing experience behind the curtain. The third resume that I could have written, now back in my 20s, I had energy to spare. I worked full-time as an executive secretary, and I worked part-time in retail. Now I'm going to show the age here. I used to sell records, 8-tracks, and cassettes. And because I had encyclopedic knowledge of top 40 music from back in the day, I could sell triple the amount of product that my colleagues could. So if I wanted to qualify for a retail sales associate or a retail manager job, I did both. That experience would be front and center, and the executive secretarial and the resume writing side, that would go behind the curtain. And the final resume that I could produce, before my resume, before my business exploded, it was, the revenues were steady at the time. I accepted a part-time job teaching night school instruction. I used to teach, back in the day, I used to teach WordPerfect, and I used to teach another word processing program as well. So if somebody wanted a night school teacher, if I wanted to apply for something like that, that experience would be front and center, and everything else would go behind the curtain. And you can appreciate that there are certain skills that cross over, but there would be other skills and attributes that would be much stronger depending on the vocation that I chose to focus on. So stay away from using a general one size fits all resume, because it's going to lengthen your job search guaranteed.
Thank you so much for these amazing tips and for showing us how things can cross over and how we can use any experience we have to create a resume and perhaps choose a different career path if the one we're in right now, we don't like it, to kind of build on past experiences. So thank you so much for being on Hoda's Career Info, Marianne. And I appreciate your time and your sharing your expertise.
Oh, the pleasure was mine, Hoda. Thank you so much for reaching out to me.
You've been listening to Hoda's Career Info, the program where career professionals from across the globe join me to empower you to succeed. Thank you for joining me and Marian Bernard in this episode of Hoda's Career Info 2022. I hope the resume writing tips shared by Marian help you find your next role fast. You can connect with Marian Bernard on LinkedIn or on Facebook. Please remember that you can listen to Hoda's Career Info since it's also dropped as a podcast. To let me know if you are interested in an opportunity to talk about your work, you can send me a direct message on my website, rightcareerfit.com, where you can also sign up for my newsletter to stay up to date on the latest episodes. Remember to like, subscribe, share, and follow me on social media for more career info. I am your host, Hoda. Until next time, stay inspired and keep moving in productive ways.